Hare Krishna, welcome all of you for today's Bhagavad Gita reading session. Let us begin with prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaраvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 4 entitled Transcendental Knowledge. Text 27. Sarvanindriyakarmani pranakarmani cha pare atma samyama yogagno juhvati jnana dipite. Synonyms: Sarvani, all; Indriya, senses; Karmani, functions; Prana Karmani, functions of the life breath; Cha, also; Apare, others; Atma Samyama, controlling the mind; Yoga, linking process; Agnau, in the fire of; Juhvati, offers; Jnana Dipite, because of the urge for self-realization. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who are interested in self-realization in terms of mind and sense control offer the functions of all the senses as well as the vital force, breath, as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. Purport: The yoga system conceived by Patanjali is referred to herein. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, the soul is called Pratyagatma and Paragatma. As long as the soul is attached to sense enjoyment, it is called Paragatma. The soul is subjected to the functions of 10 kinds of air at work within the body, and this is perceived through the breathing system. The Patanjala system of yoga instructs one on how to control the functions of the body's air in a technical manner so that ultimately all the functions of the air within become favorable for purifying the soul of material attachment. According to this yoga system, Pratyagatma is the ultimate goal. This Pratyagatma is a withdrawal from activities in matter. The senses interact with the sense objects, like the ear for hearing, eyes for seeing, nose for smelling, tongue for tasting, hand for touching, and all of them are thus engaged in activities outside the self. They are called the functions of the pranavayu. The apanavayu goes downwards, Vyanavayu acts to shrink and expand, Samanavayu adjusts equilibrium, Udanavayu goes upwards, and when one is enlightened, one engages all these in searching for self realization. Text 28. द्रव्ययज्ञास्तपो यज्ञा योगयज्ञास्तथा परे स्वाध्यायज्ञानयज्ञाश्च यतयः संशितः व्रताः. Synonyms: Dravya sacrificing one's possessions; Tapo sacrifice in austerities; Yoga sacrifice in eightfold mysticism; Tatha, thus; Apare, others; Swadhyaya, sacrifice in the study of the Vedas; Jnana sacrifice in advancement of transcendental knowledge. Here also, Yatayaha enlightened, Samshita taken to strict, Vrataha vows. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: there are others who, enlightened by sacrificing their material possessions in severe austerities, take strict vows and practice the yoga of eightfold mysticism, and others study the Vedas for the advancement of transcendental knowledge. Purport: these sacrifices may be fitted into various divisions. There are persons who are sacrificing their possessions in the form of various kinds of charities. In India, the rich mercantile community or princely orders open various kinds of charitable institutions like Dharmashala, Annakshetra, Atiti Shala, Anathalaya, Vidyapitha, etc. In other countries too, there are many hospitals, old age homes, and similar charitable foundations meant for distributing food, education, and medical treatment free to the poor. All these charitable activities are called Dravyamaya Yajna. There are others who, for higher elevation in life or for promotion to higher planets within the universe, voluntarily accept many kinds of austerities, such as Chandrayana and Chaturmasya. These processes entail severe vows for conducting life under certain rigid rules. For example, under the Chaturmasya vow, the candidate does not shave for 4 months during the year, July to October. He does not eat certain foods, does not eat twice in a day, and does not leave home. Such sacrifice of the comforts of life is called Tapomaya Yajna. There are still others who engage themselves in different kinds of mystic yogas, like the Patanjali system, for merging into the existence of the Absolute, or Hatha Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga for particular perfections. And some travel to all the sanctified places of pilgrimage. All these practices are called Yoga Yajna, sacrifice for a certain type of perfection in the material world. There are others who engage themselves in the studies of different Vedic literatures, specifically the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutras or the Sankhya philosophy. All of these are called Swadhyaya Yajna or engagement in the sacrifice of studies. All these yogis are faithfully engaged in different types of sacrifice and are seeking a higher status of life. Krishna consciousness is, however, different from these because it is the direct service of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. Krishna consciousness cannot be attained by any one of the above mentioned types of sacrifices, but can be attained only by the mercy of the Lord and his bona fide devotee. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is transcendental. Text 29. अपाने जुह्वति प्राणं प्राणे पानं तथा परे प्राणापानगतिरुद्ध्वा प्राणायामपरायणाः अपरे नियताहारा प्राणान् प्राणेषु जुह्वति. Synonyms: apane, air which acts downward; juhvati, offers; pranam, air which acts outward; prane, in the air going outward; apanam, air going downward; tatha, as also; apare, others; prana, air going outward; apana, air going downward; gati, movement; rudhva, checking; Pranayama, trance induced by stopping all breathing. Parayanaha, so inclined. Apare, others. Niyata, controlled. Aharaha, eating. Pranan, outgoing air. Praneshu, in the outgoing air. Juhvati, sacrifices. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. And there are even others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance, and they practice stopping the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming and incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Some of them, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. Purport. This system of yoga for controlling the breathing process is called pranayama, and in the beginning it is practiced in the hatha yoga system through different sitting postures. All of these processes are recommended for controlling the senses and for advancement in spiritual realization. This practice involves controlling the air within the body to enable simultaneous passage in opposite directions. The apana air goes downward and the prana air goes up. The pranayama yogi practices breathing the opposite way until the currents are neutralized into puraka equilibrium. Similarly, when the exhaled breathing is offered to inhaled breathing, it is called rechaka. When both air currents are completely stopped, it is called kumbhaka yoga. By practice of kumbhaka yoga, the yogis increase the duration of life by many, many years. A Krishna conscious person, however, being always situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, automatically becomes the controller of the senses. His senses, being always engaged in the service of Krishna, have no chance of becoming otherwise engaged. So, at the end of life, he is naturally transferred to the transcendental plane of Lord Krishna. Consequently, he makes no attempt to increase his longevity. He is at once raised to the platform of liberation. A Krishna conscious person begins from the transcendental stage, and he is constantly in that consciousness. Therefore, there is no falling down, and ultimately he enters into the abode of the Lord without delay. The practice of reduced eating is automatically done when one eats only Krishna prasadam, or food which is offered first to the Lord. Reducing the eating process is very helpful in the matter of sense control, and without sense control, there is no possibility of getting out of the material entanglement. Text 30. सर्वेऽप्येते यज्ञविदो यज्ञक्षपितकल्मषाः यज्ञशिष्टामृतभुजो यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनम्. Synonyms: Sarve, all. Api, although apparently different. Ete, all these. Yajnavidaha, conversant with the purpose of performing. Yajna, sacrifices. Kshapita, being cleansed of the result of such performances. Kalmashaha, sinful reactions. Yajnashishta, as a result of such performances of yajna. Amrita bhujaha, those who have tasted such nectar. Yanti, do approach. Brahma, the supreme. Sanatanam, eternal atmosphere. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reaction and having tasted the nectar of the remnants of such sacrifice, they go to the supreme eternal atmosphere. Purport. From the foregoing explanation of different types of sacrifice, namely sacrifice of one's possessions, study of the Vedas or philosophical doctrines, and performance of the yoga system, it is found that the common aim of all is to control the senses. Sense gratification is the root cause of material existence. Therefore, unless and until one is situated on a platform apart from sense gratification, there is no chance of being elevated to the eternal platform of full knowledge, full bliss, and full life. This platform is in the eternal atmosphere or Brahman atmosphere. All the above mentioned sacrifices help one to become cleansed of the sinful reactions of material existence. By this advancement in life, one not only becomes happy and opulent in this life, but also at the end, he enters into the eternal kingdom of God, either merging into the impersonal Brahman or associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Text 31. Nayam lokostya yajnasya kutonya kuru sattama. Synonyms. Na, never. I am this. Lokaha, planet. Asti, there is. Ayajnasya, of the foolish. Kutaha, where is. Anyaha, the other. Kuru Sattama, O best amongst the Kurus. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? Purport. Whatever form of material existence one is in, one is invariably ignorant of his real situation. In other words, existence in the material world is due to the multiple reactions to our sinful lives. Ignorance is the cause of sinful life, and sinful life is the cause of one's dragging on in material existence. The human form of life is the only loophole by which one may get out of this entanglement. The Vedas, therefore, give us a chance for escape by pointing out the paths of religion, economic comfort, regulated sense gratification, and at last, the means to get out of the miserable condition entirely. The path of religion or the different kinds of sacrifice recommended above automatically solves our economic problems. By performance of yajna, we can have enough food, enough milk, etc., even if there is a so called increase of population. When the body is fully supplied, naturally the next stage is to satisfy the senses. The Vedas prescribe, therefore, sacred marriage for regulated sense gratification. Thereby, one is gradually elevated to the platform of release from material bondage, and the highest perfection of liberated life is to associate with the Supreme Lord. Perfection is achieved by performance of yajna or sacrifice, as described above. Now, if a person is not inclined to perform yajna according to the Vedas, how can he expect a happy life? There are different grades of material comforts in different heavenly planets, and in all cases, there is immense happiness for persons engaged in different kinds of yajna. But the highest kind of happiness that a man can achieve is to be promoted to the spiritual planets by practice of Krishna consciousness. A life of Krishna consciousness is therefore the solution to all the problems of material existence. Text 32. एवं बहुविधा यज्ञा वितता ब्रह्मणो मुखे कर्मजान् विद्धितान् सर्वान् एवं ज्ञात्वा विमोक्ष्यसे. Synonyms. Evam, thus. Bahuvidhaha, various kinds of. Yajnaha, sacrifices. Vitataha, widespread. Brahmanaha, of the Vedas. Mukhe, in the face of. Karmajan, born of work. Vidhi, you should know. Tan, them. Sarvan, all. Evam, thus. Jnatva, knowing. Vimokshase, be liberated. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. Purport. Different types of sacrifice, as discussed above, are mentioned in the Vedas to suit the different types of worker. Because men are so deeply absorbed in the bodily concept, these sacrifices are so arranged that one can work either with the body, the mind, or the intelligence. But all of them are recommended for ultimately bringing about liberation from the body. This is confirmed by the Lord herewith from his own mouth. Text 33. Shreyan dravyamaya yajnat jnana yajnah parantapa sarvam karma khilam partha jnane parisamapyate. Synonyms. Shreyan, greater. Dravyamayat, than the sacrifice of material possessions. Yajnat, knowledge. Jnana yajnaha, sacrifice in knowledge. Parantapa, O chastiser of the enemy. Sarvam, all. Karma, activities. Akhilam, in totality. Partha, O son of Pritha. Jnane, in knowledge. Parisamapyate, ends in. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice of knowledge is greater than the sacrifice of material possessions. O son of Pritha, after all, the sacrifice of work culminates in transcendental knowledge. Purport. The purpose of all sacrifices is to arrive at the status of complete knowledge, then to gain release from material miseries, and ultimately to engage in loving transcendental service to the Supreme Lord, Krishna consciousness. Nonetheless, there is a mystery about all these different activities of sacrifice, and one should know this mystery. Sacrifices sometimes take different forms according to the particular faith of the performer. When one's faith reaches the stage of transcendental knowledge, the performer of sacrifices should be considered more advanced than those who simply sacrifice material possessions without such knowledge. For without attainment of knowledge, sacrifices remain on the material platform and bestow no spiritual benefit. Real knowledge culminates in Krishna consciousness, the highest stage of transcendental knowledge. Without the elevation of knowledge, sacrifices are simply material activities. When, however, they are elevated to the level of transcendental knowledge, all such activities enter onto the spiritual platform. Depending on differences in consciousness, sacrificial activities are sometimes called karma kanda, fruitive activities, and sometimes jnana kanda, knowledge in the pursuit of truth. It is better when the end is knowledge. Text 34. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninastatvadarshinaha. Synonyms. Tat, that knowledge of different sacrifices. Vidhi, try to understand. Pranipatena, by approaching a spiritual master. Pariprashnena, by submissive inquiries. Sevaya, by the rendering of service. Upadekshyanti, initiate. Te, unto you. Jnanam, knowledge. Jnaninaha, the self-realized. Tattva, truth. Darshinaha, the seers. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Purport. The path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from the Lord Himself. No one can be a bona fide spiritual master without following this principle of disciplic succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as is the fashion of the foolish pretenders. The Bhagavatam says, Dharmam hi sakshat bhagavat pranitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation or dry arguments cannot help one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual advancement. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master, and when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. One should not only hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one must also get a clear understanding from him in submission and service and inquiries. A bona fide spiritual master is by nature very kind toward the disciple. Therefore, when the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries become perfect. We shall continue to read in the next session. Thank you for joining. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की जय. विश्व गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Welcome all of you for today's Bhagavad Gita reading session. Let us begin with prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Chapter 4 entitled Transcendental Knowledge, Text 35. यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषाणि द्रक्ष्यस्यात्मन्यथो मयि. Synonyms: Yat, which, Jnatva, knowing, Na, never, Punaha, again, Moham, illusion, Evam, like this, Yasyasi, you shall go, Pandava, O son of Pandu, Yena, by which, Bhutani, all living entities, Asheshani, totally, Drakshyasi, you will see, Atmani, in the Supreme Soul, Atho, or in other words, Mai, in me. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, and when you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but part of me, and that they are in me and are mine. Purport: The result of receiving knowledge from a self realized soul, or one who knows things as they are, is learning that all living beings are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The sense of a separated existence from Krishna is called Maya. Ma, not. Ya, this. So, some think that we have nothing to do with Krishna, and Krishna is only a great historical personality, and that the Absolute is the impersonal Brahman. Factually, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the impersonal Brahman is the personal effulgence of Krishna. Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of everything. In the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. Even the millions of incarnations are only his different expansions. Similarly, the living entities are also expansions of Krishna. The Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that Krishna loses his own separate existence in his many expansions. This thought is material in nature. We have experience in the material world that a thing, when fragmentally distributed, loses its own original identity. But the Mayavadi philosophers fail to understand that absolute means that 1 plus 1 is equal to 1, and that 1 minus 1 is also equal to 1. This is the case in the absolute world. For want of sufficient knowledge in the absolute science, we are now covered with illusion, and therefore we think that we are separate from Krishna. Although we are separated parts of Krishna, we are nevertheless not different from him. The bodily difference of the living entities is Maya, or not actual fact. We are all meant to satisfy Krishna. By Maya alone, Arjuna thought that the temporary bodily relationship with his kinsmen was more important than his eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna. The whole teaching of the Gita is targeted toward this end, that a living being, as his eternal servitor, cannot be separated from Krishna, and his sense of being an identity apart from Krishna is called Maya. The living entities, as separate parts and parcels of the Supreme, have a purpose to fulfill. Having forgotten that purpose, since time immemorial, they are situated in different bodies as men, animals, demigods, etc. Such bodily differences arise from forgetfulness of the transcendental service of the Lord. But when one is engaged in transcendental service through Krishna consciousness, one becomes at once liberated from this illusion. One can acquire such pure knowledge only from the bona fide spiritual master and thereby avoid the delusion that the living entity is equal to Krishna. Perfect knowledge is that the Supreme Soul, Krishna, is the supreme shelter for all living entities, and giving up such shelter, the living entities are deluded by the material energy, imagining themselves to have a separate identity. Thus, under different standards of material identity, they become forgetful of Krishna. When, however, such deluded living entities become situated in Krishna consciousness, it is to be understood that they are on the path of liberation, as confirmed in the Bhagavatam. Muktir hitvanyatha rupam swarupena vyavasthitihi. Liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position as the eternal servitor of Krishna, Krishna consciousness. Text 36. अपि चेदसि पापेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः पापकृत्तमः सर्वं ज्ञानप्लवेनैव वृजिनं सन्तरिष्यसि. Synonyms: api, even; chet, if; asi, you are; papebhyaha, of sinners; sarvebhyaha, of all; papakrittamaha, the greatest sinner; sarvam, all such sinful actions; jnanaplavena, by the boat of transcendental knowledge; eva, certainly; vrijinam, the ocean of miseries; santarishyasi, you will cross completely. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. Purport: Proper understanding of one's constitutional position in relationship to Krishna is so nice that it can once lift one from the struggle for existence which goes on in the ocean of nescience. This material world is sometimes regarded as an ocean of nescience and sometimes as a blazing forest. In the ocean, however expert a swimmer one may be, the struggle for existence is very severe. If someone comes forward and lifts the struggling swimmer from the ocean, he is the greatest savior. Perfect knowledge received from the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the path of liberation. The boat of Krishna consciousness is very simple, but at the same time the most sublime. Text 37. यथैधांसि समिद्धोऽग्निर्भस्मसात् कुरुतेऽर्जुन ज्ञानाग्निसर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कुरुते तथा. Synonyms: Yatha, just as; Edhamsi, firewood; Samid, Samidhaha, blazing; Agnihi, fire; Bhasmasat, turns into ashes; Kurute, so does; Arjuna, O Arjuna; Jnana Agnihi, the fire of knowledge; Sarva Karmani, all reactions to material activities; Bhasmasat, to ashes; Kurute, it so does; Tatha, similarly. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: as the blazing fire turns firewood into ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. Purport: perfect knowledge of self and superself and of their relationship is compared herein to fire. This fire not only burns up all reactions to impious activities, but also all reactions to pious activities, turning them to ashes. There are many stages of reaction: reaction in the making, reaction fructifying, reaction already achieved, and reaction a priori. But knowledge of the constitutional position of the living entity burns everything to ashes. When one is in complete knowledge, all reactions, both a priori and a posteriori, are consumed. In the Vedas, it is stated, Ubhe ubhavaishate, Ubhe ubhavaisha ete, taratyamrita sadhava asadhuni, sadhva sadhuni. One overcomes both the pious and impious interactions of work. Text 38. न हि ज्ञानेन सदृशं पवित्रम् इह विद्यते तत्स्वयं योगसंसिद्ध कालेनात्मनि विन्दति. Synonyms: na, never; he, certainly; jnanena, with knowledge; sadrisham, in comparison; pavitram, sanctified; iha, in this world; vidyate, exists; tat, that; swayam, itself; yoga, devotion; samsiddhaha, matured; kalena, in course of time; atmani, in himself; vindati, enjoys. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: in this world there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has achieved this enjoys the self within himself in due course of time. Purport: when we speak of transcendental knowledge, we do so in terms of spiritual understanding. As such, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Ignorance is the cause of our bondage, and knowledge is the cause of our liberation. This knowledge is the mature fruit of devotional service, and when one is situated in transcendental knowledge, he need not search for peace elsewhere, for he enjoys peace within himself. In other words, this knowledge and peace are culminated in Krishna consciousness. That is the last word in the Bhagavad Gita. Text 39. श्रद्धावाल्लभते ज्ञानं तत्परः संयतेन्द्रियः ज्ञानं लब्ध्वा परां शान्तिम् अचिरेणाधिगच्छति. Synonyms: Shraddhavan, a faithful man; Labhate, achieves; Jnanam, knowledge; Tatparaha, very much attached to it; Samyata, controlled; Indriyaha, senses; Jnanam, knowledge; Labdhva, having achieved; Param, transcendental; Shantim, peace; Achirena, very soon; Adhigachati, attains. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: a faithful man who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. Purport. Such knowledge in Krishna consciousness can be achieved by a faithful person who believes firmly in Krishna. One is called a faithful man who thinks that simply by acting in Krishna consciousness he can attain the highest perfection. This faith is attained by the discharge of devotional service and by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, which cleanses one's heart of all material dirt. Over and above this, one should control the senses. A person who is faithful to Krishna and who controls the senses can easily attain perfection in the knowledge of Krishna consciousness without delay. Text 40. Agnyascha Shrad Agnyascha Shraddhadanasya Agnyascha Shraddhadanascha Samshayatma Vinashyati Nayam Lokosti na paro na sukham samshayatmanaha. Synonyms: Agnyaha, fools who have no knowledge in standard scriptures. Cha, and Ashraddhadhanaha, without faith in revealed scriptures. Cha, also. Samshaya, doubts. Atma, person. Vinashyati, falls back. Na, never. Ayam, this. Lokaha, world. Asti, there is. Na, neither. Paraha, next life. Na, not. Sukham, happiness. Samshaya, doubtful. Atmanaha, of the person. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. Purport. Out of many standard and authoritative revealed scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita is the best. Persons who are almost like animals have no faith in or knowledge of the standard revealed scriptures, and some, even though they have knowledge of or can cite passages from the revealed scriptures, have actually no faith in these words. And even though others may have faith in scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, they do not believe in or worship the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Such persons cannot have any standing in Krishna consciousness. They fall down. Out of all the above mentioned persons, those who have no faith and are always doubtful make no progress at all. Men without faith in God and His revealed word find no good in this world nor in the next. For them there is no happiness whatsoever. One should therefore follow the principles of revealed scriptures with faith and thereby be raised to the platform of knowledge. Only this knowledge will help one become promoted to the transcendental platform of spiritual understanding. In other words, doubtful persons have no status whatsoever in spiritual emancipation. One should therefore follow in the footsteps of great acharyas who are in the disciplic succession and thereby attain success. Text 41. Yoga Sanyastya Yoga Sanyasta Karmanam Jnana Sanchinna Samshayam Atmavantam na karmani nibadhanti dhananjaya. Synonyms: Yoga, devotional service in Karma Yoga. Sannyasta, renounced. Karmanam, karmanam, of the performers. Jnana, knowledge. Sanchinna, cut by the advancement of of knowledge. Samshayam, doubts. Atmavantam, situated in the self. Na, never. Karmani, work. Nibadhanti, do bind up. Dhananjaya, O conqueror of riches. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Therefore, one who has renounced the fruits of his action, whose doubts are destroyed by transcendental knowledge, and who is situated firmly in the self, is not bound by works, O conqueror of riches. Purport. One who follows the instruction of the Gita as it is imparted by the Lord, the personality of Godhead Himself, becomes free from all doubts by the grace of transcendental knowledge. He, as a part and parcel of the Lord, in full Krishna consciousness, is already established in self-knowledge. As such, he is undoubtedly above bondage to action. Text 42. तस्मादज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञानासिनात्मनः चित्वैनं संशयं योगम् आत्तिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत. Synonyms. Tasmat, therefore, ajnana, ajnana sambhutam, outcome of ignorance. Hrit, stham, situated in the heart. Jnana, knowledge. Asina, by the weapon of. Atmanaha, of the self. Chitva, cutting off. Enam, this. Samshayam, doubt. Yogam, in yoga. Attishtha, be situated. Uttishtha, stand up to fight. Bharata, O descendant of Bharata. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. Purport. The yoga system instructed in this chapter is called Sanatana Yoga, or eternal activities performed by the living entity. This yoga has two divisions of sacrificial actions. One is called sacrifice of one's material possessions, and the other is called knowledge of self, which is pure spiritual activity. If sacrifice of one's material possessions is not dovetailed for spiritual realization, then such sacrifice becomes material. But one who performs such sacrifices with a spiritual objective or in devotional service makes a perfect sacrifice. When we come to spiritual activities, we find that they are also when we come to spiritual activities, we find that these are also divided into two, namely, understanding of one's own self or one's constitutional position, and the truth regarding the nature of one's personality. in household life, in in mentions, and dharma and the part all act of
Hare Krishna. I'm getting audio issues. I can't hear properly. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Welcome all of you for today's Bhagavad Gita reading session. Let us begin with prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaраvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 4 Transcendental Knowledge. Text 42. तस्मादज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञानासिनात्मनः चित्वैनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत. Synonyms: Tasmat, therefore, Ajnana Sambhutam, outcome of ignorance, Hritstham, situated in the heart, Jnana, knowledge, Asina, by the weapon of, Atmanaha, of the self, Chitva, cutting off, Enam, this, Samshayam, doubt, Yogam, in yoga, Atishtha, be situated, Uttishtha, stand up to fight, Bharata, O descendant of Bharata. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. Purport: The yoga system instructed in this chapter is called Sanatana Yoga, or eternal activities performed by the living entity. This yoga has two divisions of sacrificial actions. One is called sacrifice of one's material possessions, and the other is called knowledge of self, which is pure spiritual activity. If sacrifice of one's material possessions is not dovetailed for spiritual realization, then such sacrifice becomes material. But one who performs such sacrifices with a spiritual objective or in devotional service makes a perfect sacrifice. When we come to spiritual activities, we find that there are also these are also divided into two, namely understanding of one's own self or one's constitutional position and the truth regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who follows the path of the Gita as it is can very easily understand these two important divisions of spiritual knowledge. For him, there is no difficulty in obtaining perfect knowledge of the self as part and parcel of the Lord. And such understanding is beneficial for such a person who easily understands the transcendental activities of the Lord. In the beginning of this chapter, the transcendental activities of the Lord were discussed by the Supreme Lord Himself. One who does not understand the instructions of the Gita is faithless and is to be considered to be misusing the fragmental independence awarded to him by the Lord. In spite of such instructions, one who does not understand the real nature of the Lord as the eternal, blissful, all knowing personality of Godhead is certainly fool number one. Ignorance can be removed by gradual acceptance of the principles of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is awakened by different types of sacrifices to the demigods, sacrifice to Brahman, sacrifice in celibacy, in household life, in controlling the senses, in practicing mystic yoga, in penance, in foregoing material possessions, in studying the Vedas, and in partaking of the social institution called Varnashrama Dharma. All of these are known as sacrifice, and all of them are based on regulated action. But within all these activities, the important factor is self realization. One who seeks that objective is the real student of Bhagavad Gita, but one who doubts the authority of Krishna falls back. One is therefore advised to study Bhagavad Gita or any other scripture under a bona fide spiritual master with service and surrender. A bona fide spiritual master is in the disciplic succession from time a bona fide spiritual master is in the disciplic succession from time eternal, and he does not deviate at all from the instructions of the Supreme Lord as they were imparted millions of years ago to the Sun God, from whom the instructions of Bhagavad Gita have come down to the earthly kingdom. One should, therefore, follow the path of Bhagavad Gita as it is expressed in the Gita itself and beware of self interested people after personal aggrandizement who deviate others from the actual path. The Lord is definitely the Supreme Person and his activities are transcendental. One who understands this is a liberated person from the very beginning of his study of the Gita. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the fourth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of transcendental knowledge. Text chapter 5. We are beginning a new chapter today. Chapter 5, Karma Yoga action in Krishna consciousness. Text 1. Arjuna Uvacha Sanyasam Karmanam Krishna Punaryogam Cha Samshasi Yashreya Etayorekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam. Synonyms. Arjuna Uvacha, Arjuna said, Sanyasam, renunciation, Karmanam, of all activities, Krishna, O Krishna, Punaha, again, Yogam, devotional service, Cha, also, Shamsasi, you are praising, Yat, which, Shreyaha, is beneficial, Etayoho, of these two, Ekam, one, Tat, that, Me, unto me, Bruhi, please tell, Sunishchitam, definitely. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Arjuna said, O Krishna, first of all you ask me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that work in devotional service is better than, sorry, in this fifth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that work in devotional service is better than dry mental speculation. Devotional service is easier than the latter because, being transcendental in nature, it frees one from reaction. In the second chapter, preliminary knowledge of the soul and its entanglement in the material body were explained. How to get out of this material engagement by Buddhi Yoga or devotional service was also explained therein. In the third chapter, it was explained that a person who is situated on the platform of knowledge no longer has any duties to perform. And in the fourth chapter, the Lord told Arjuna that all kinds of sacrificial work culminate in knowledge. However, at the end of the fourth chapter, the Lord advised Arjuna to wake up and fight, being situated in perfect knowledge. Therefore, by simultaneously stressing the importance of both work in devotion and inaction in knowledge, Krishna has perplexed Arjuna and confused his determination. Arjuna understands that renunciation in knowledge involves cessation of all kinds of work performed as sense activities. But if one performs work in devotional service, then how is work stopped? In other words, he thinks that sannyasam or renunciation in knowledge should be altogether free from all kinds of activity because work and renunciation appear to him to be incompatible. He appears not to have understood that work in full knowledge is non reactive and is therefore the same as inaction. He inquires, therefore, whether he should cease work altogether or work with full knowledge. Text 2. Sri Bhagavanuvacha Sannyasa Karma Yogascha Nishreyasakara Vubhau Tayostu Karma Sannyasat Karma Yogo. Synonyms. Sri Bhagavanuvacha, the personality of Godhead said, Sannyasaha, renunciation of work, Karma Yogaha, work in devotion, Cha, also, Nishreyasakaro, all leading to the path of liberation, Ubhau, both, Tayoho, of the two, two, But karma sannyasat, in comparison to the renunciation of fruitive work, karma yoga, work in devotion, vishishyate, is better. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: The Blessed Lord said, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of works. Purport: Fruitive activities or seeking sense gratification are cause for material bondage. As long as one is engaged in activities aimed at improving the standard of bodily comfort, one is sure to transmigrate to different types of bodies, thereby continuing material bondage perpetually. Srimad Bhagavatam confirms this as follows: Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yadindriya pritaya aprunoti na sadhu manye yata atmano yam asannapi kleshad asadehaha पराभवस्तावदबोधजातो यावन्न जिज्ञासत आत्मतत्त्वम् यावत् क्रियास्तावदिदं मनो वै कर्मात्मकं येन शरीरबद्धः एवं मनः कर्मवशं प्रयुङ्क्ते अविद्यया यात्मन्युपधीयमाने प्रीतिर्न यावन्मयि वासुदेवे न मुच्यते देहयोगेन तावत्. People are mad after sense gratification, and they do not know that this present body, which is full of miseries, is a result of one's fruitive activities in the past. Although this body is temporary, it is always giving one trouble in many ways. Therefore, to act for sense gratification is not good. One is considered to be a failure in life as long as he makes no inquiry about the nature of work for fruitive results. For as long as one is engrossed in the consciousness of sense gratification, one has to transmigrate from one body to another. Although the mind may be engrossed in fruitive activities and influenced by ignorance, one must develop a love for devotional service to Vasudeva. Only then can one have the opportunity to get out of the bondage of material existence. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, verses 4 to 6. Therefore, jnana or knowledge that one is not this material body but spirit soul is not sufficient for liberation. One has to act in the status of spirit soul, otherwise, there is no escape from material bondage. Action in Krishna consciousness is not, however, action on the fruitive platform. Activities performed in full knowledge strengthen one's advancement in real knowledge. Without Krishna consciousness, mere renunciation of fruitive activities does not actually purify the heart of a conditioned soul. As long as the heart is not purified, one has to work on the fruitive platform. But action in Krishna consciousness automatically helps one escape the result of fruitive action so that one need not descend to the material platform. Therefore, action in Krishna consciousness is always superior to renunciation, which always entails a risk of falling. Renunciation without Krishna consciousness Renunciation without Krishna consciousness is incomplete, as is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. प्रापंचिकतया बुद्ध्या हरिसम्बन्धिवस्तुनः मुमुक्षुभिः परित्यागो वैराग्यं फल्गु कथ्यते. Renunciation by persons eager to achieve liberation of things which are related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, though they are material, is called incomplete renunciation. Renunciation is complete when it is in the knowledge that everything in existence belongs to the Lord and that no one should claim proprietorship over anything. One should understand that factually nothing belongs to anyone. Then where is the question of renunciation? One who knows that everything is Krishna's property is always situated in renunciation. Since everything belongs to Krishna, everything should be employed in the service of Krishna. This perfect form of action in Krishna consciousness is far better than any amount of artificial renunciation by a sannyasi of the Mayavadi school. Text 3. ज्ञेयस् ज्ञेयस नित्यसन्न्यासी यो न द्वेष्टि न काङ्क्षति निर्द्वन्द्वो हि महाबाहो सुखं बन्धात् प्रमुच्यते. Synonyms: Jneyah should be known, Saha he, Nitya always, Sannyasi renouncer, Yaha who, Na never, Dveshti abhors, Na nor, Kankshati desires, Nirdvandvaha free from all dualities. He certainly, Mahabaho, O mighty armed one, Sukham happily, Bandhat from bondage, Pramuchyate completely liberated. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, liberated from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty arm Arjuna. Purport: One who is fully in Krishna consciousness is always a renouncer because he feels neither hatred nor desire for the results of his actions. Such a renouncer, dedicated to the transcendental loving service of the Lord, is fully qualified in knowledge because he knows his constitutional position in his relationship with Krishna. He knows fully well that Krishna is the whole and that he is part and parcel of Krishna. Such knowledge is perfect because it is qualitatively and quantitatively correct. The concept of oneness with Krishna is incorrect because the part cannot be equal to the whole. Knowledge that one is one in quality yet different in quantity is correct transcendental knowledge, leading one to become full in himself, having nothing to aspire to nor lament over. There is no duality in his mind because whatever he does for Krishna. Being thus freed from the platform of dualities, he is liberated even in this material world. Text 4. साङ्ख्ययोगौ पृथग्बाला प्रवदन्ति न पण्डिताः एकम् अप्यास्थिता सम्यग् उभयोर्विन्दते फलम्. Synonyms: Sankhya, analytical study of the material world. Yoga, work in devotional service. Prithak, different. Balaha, less intelligent. Pravadanti, do talk. Na, Panditaha, the learned. Ekam, in one. Api, even though. Asthitaha, being situated. Samyak, complete. Ubhayoho, of both. Vindate, enjoys. Phalam, result. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: Only the ignorant speak of karma yoga and devotional service as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. Purport. The aim of the analytical study of the material world is to find the soul of existence. The soul of the material world is Vishnu or the super soul. Devotional service to the Lord entails service to the super soul. One process is to find the root of the tree and next to water the root. The real student of Sankhya philosophy finds the root of the material world, Vishnu, and then, in perfect knowledge, engages himself in the service of the Lord. Therefore, in essence, there is no difference between the two because the aim of both is Vishnu. Those who do not know the ultimate end say that the purposes of Sankhya and Karma Yoga are not the same, but one who is learned knows the unifying aim in these different processes. Text 5. यत्साङ्ख्यै प्राप्यते स्थानं तद्योगैरपि गम्यते एकं साङ्ख्यं च योगं च यः पश्यति स पश्यति. Synonyms. Yat, what? Sankhyahi, by means of Sankhya philosophy. Prapyate is achieved. Sthanam, place. Tat, that. Yogaihi, by devotional service. Api, also. Gamyate, one can attain. Ekam, one. Sankhyam, analytical study. Cha, and. Yogam, action in devotion. Cha, and. Yaha, one who. Pashyati, sees. Saha, he. Pashyati, actually sees. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. One who knows that the position reached by means of renunciation can also be attained by works in devotional service, and who therefore sees that the path of works and the path of renunciation are one, sees things as they are. Purport. The real purpose of philosophical research is to find the ultimate goal of life. Since the ultimate goal of life is self realization, there is no difference between the conclusions reached by the two processes. By Sankhya philosophical research, one comes to the conclusion that a living entity is not a part and parcel of the material world, but of the Supreme Spirit whole. Consequently, the spirit soul has nothing to do with the material world. His actions must be in some relation with the Supreme. When he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is actually in his constitutional position. In the first process of Sankhya, one has to become detached from matter, and in the devotional yoga process, one has to attach himself to the work of Krishna. Factually, both processes are the same, although superficially, one process appears to involve detachment and the other process appears to involve attachment. However, detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna are one and the same. One who can see this thing, see this, see thi- one who can see this, sees text. One who can see this sees things as they are. Text 6. Sannyasasthu mahabaho dukkhamaptum mayo gatah yogayukto munirbrahma nachirenadhigacchati. Synonyms. Sannyasaha, the renounced order of life. 2. But, Mahabaho, O mighty armed one, Dukkham, distress, Aptum, to be afflicted with, Ayogataha, without devotional service, Yoga Yuktaha, one engaged in devotional service, Munihi, thinker, Brahma, supreme, Na, without, Chirena, delay, Adhigachati, attains. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: Unless one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, mere renunciation of activities cannot make one happy. The sages, purified by works of devotion, achieve the supreme without delay. Purport: There are two classes of sannyasis or persons in the renounced order of life. The Mayavadi sannyasis are engaged in the study of Sankhya philosophy, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasis are engaged in the study of Bhagavatam philosophy, which offers the proper commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. The Mayavadi sannyasis also study the Vedanta Sutras but use their own commentary called Sharirika Bhashya, written by Shankaracharya. The students of the Bhagavata school are engaged in devotional service of the Lord according to Pancharatriki regulations, and therefore the Vaishnava sannyasis have multiple engagements in the transcendental service of the Lord. The Vaishnava sannyasis have nothing to do with material activities, and yet they perform various activities in their devotional service to the Lord. But the Mayavadi sannyasis, engaged in the studies of Sankhya and Vedanta and speculation, cannot relish transcendental service of the Lord. Because their studies become very tedious, they sometimes become tired of Brahman speculation, and thus they take shelter of the Bhagavatam without proper understanding. Consequently, their study of the Srimad Bhagavatam becomes troublesome. Dry speculations and impersonal interpretations by artificial means are all useless for the Mayavadi sannyasis. The Vaishnava sannyasis, who are engaged in devotional service, are happy in the discharge of their transcendental duties, and they have the guarantee of ultimate entrance into the kingdom of God. The Mayavadi sannyasis sometimes fall down from the path of self realization and again enter into material activities of a philanthropic and altruistic nature, which are nothing but material engagements. Therefore, the conclusion is that those who are engaged in Krishna consciousness are better situated than the sannyasis engaged in simple Brahman speculation, although they too come to Krishna consciousness after many births. We shall continue to read in the next session. Thank you for joining. ग्रंथरा श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की जय, विश्व गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Welcome all of you for today's Bhagavad Gita reading session. Let us begin with prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaраvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 5 entitled Karma Yoga Action in Krishna Consciousness. Text 7. योगयुक्तो विशुद्धात्मा विजितात्मा जितेन्द्रियः सर्वभूतात्मभूतात्मा कुर्वन्नपि न लिप्यते. Synonyms: Yoga Yuktaha, engaged in devotional service; Vishuddha Atma, a purified soul; Vijita Atma, self-controlled; Jita Indriyaha, having conquered the senses; Sarva Bhuta Atma Bhuta Atma, compassionate to all living entities; Kurvan Api, although engaged in work; Na, never; Lipyate, is engaged, is entangled. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Purport. One who is on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living being, and every living being is dear to him. This is due to his Krishna consciousness. Such a person cannot think of any living being as separate from Krishna, just as the leaves and branches of a tree are not separate from the tree. He knows very well that by pouring water on the root of the tree, the water will be distributed to all the leaves and branches, or by supplying food to the stomach, the energy is automatically distributed throughout the body. Because one who works in Krishna consciousness is servant to all, he is very dear to everyone. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. Because he is pure in consciousness, his mind is completely controlled, and because his mind is controlled, his senses are also controlled. Because his mind is always fixed on Krishna, there is no chance of his being deviated from Krishna. Nor is there a chance that he will engage his senses in matters other than the service of the Lord. He does not like to hear anything except topics relating to Krishna. He does not like to eat anything which is not offered to Krishna, and he does not wish to go anywhere if Krishna is not involved. Therefore, his senses are controlled. A man of controlled senses cannot be offensive to anyone. One may ask, why then was Arjuna offensive in battle to others? Wasn't he in Krishna consciousness? Arjuna was only superficially offensive because, as has already been explained in the second chapter, all the assembled persons on the battlefield would continue to live individually, as the soul cannot be slain. So, spiritually, no one was killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only their dresses were changed by the order of Krishna, who was personally present. Therefore, Arjuna, while fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was not really fighting at all. He was simply carrying out the orders of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Such a person is never entangled in the reactions of work. Texts 8 and 9. नैव किञ्चित् करोमीति युक्तो मन्येत तत्त्ववित् पश्यन् शृण्वन् स्पृशन् जिघ्रन् अश्नन् गच्छन् स्वपन् श्वसन् प्रलपन् विसृजन् घृणन् उन्मिषन् निमिषन्नपि इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेषु वर्तन्त इति धारयन्. Synonyms: Na, never; eva, certainly; kinchit, anything; karomi, do I do; iti, thus; yuktaha, engaged in the divine consciousness; manyeta, thinks; Tattvavit, one who knows the truth. Pashyan by seeing, Shrinvan by hearing, Sprishan by touching, Jigran by smelling, Ashnan by eating, Gachan by going, Swapan by dreaming, Shwasan by breathing, Pralapan by talking, Visrujan by giving up, Ghrinan by accepting, Unmishan opening, Nimishan closing, Api in spite of, Indriyani the senses, Indriya artheshu in sense gratification, Vartante let them be so engaged, Iti thus, Dharayan considering. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: a person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, opening, or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. Purport: a person in Krishna consciousness is pure in his existence, and consequently, he has nothing to do with any work which depends upon five immediate and remote causes: the doer, the work, the situation, the endeavor, and fortune. This is because he is engaged in the loving transcendental service of Krishna. Although he appears to be acting with his body and senses, he is always conscious of his actual position, which is spiritual engagement. In material consciousness, the senses are engaged in sense gratification, but in Krishna consciousness, the senses are engaged in the satisfaction of Krishna's senses. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is always free, even though he appears to be engaged in things of the senses. Activities such as seeing, hearing, speaking, evacuating, etc., are actions of the senses meant for work. A Krishna consciousness person is never affected by the actions of the senses. He cannot perform any act except in the service of the Lord, because he knows that he is the eternal servitor of the Lord. Text 10. ब्रह्मण्याधाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रमिवाम्भसा. Synonyms: Brahmani, the Supreme Personality of Godhead; Adhaya, resigning unto; Karmani, all works; Sangam, attachment; Tyaktva, giving up; Karoti, performs; Yaha, who; Lipyate, is affected; Na, never; Saha, he; Papena, by sin; Padmapatram, lotus leaf; Iva, like; Ambhasa, in the water. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: one who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme God, is not affected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Purport: here, Brahmani means in Krishna consciousness. The material world is a sum total manifestation of the three modes of material nature, technically called the Pradhana. The Vedic hymns Sarvam etad Brahma Tasmad etad Brahma Nama Rupam Annam cha Jayate, and in the Bhagavad Gita Mama Yonir Mahad Brahma indicate that everything in the material world is the manifestation of Brahman. And although the effects are differently manifested, they are not different from the cause. In the Ishopanishad, it is said that everything is related to the Supreme Brahman or Krishna, and thus everything belongs to him only. One who knows perfectly well that everything belongs to Krishna, that he is the proprietor of everything, and that therefore everything is engaged in the service of the Lord, naturally has nothing to do with the results of his activities, whether virtuous or sinful. Even one's material body being a gift of the Lord for carrying out a particular type of action can be engaged in Krishna consciousness. It is beyond contamination by sinful reactions, exactly as the lotus leaf, though remaining in the water, is not wet. The Lord also says in the Gita, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya, resign all works unto me, Krishna. The conclusion is that a person without Krishna consciousness acts according to the concept of the material body and senses, but a person in Krishna consciousness acts according to the knowledge that the body is the property of Krishna and should therefore be engaged in the service of Krishna. Text 11. कायेन मनसा बुद्ध्या केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति सङ्गं त्यक्त्वात्मशुद्धये. Synonyms. Kayena with the body, manasa with the mind, buddhya with the intelligence, kevalaihi purified, indriyaihi with the senses, api even with yoginaha the Krishna conscious persons, karma actions, kurvanti they act, sangam attachment, tyaktva giving up, atma self, shuddhaye for the purpose of purification. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses only for the purpose of purification. Purport. By acting in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the senses of Krishna, any action, whether of the body, mind, intelligence, or even of the senses, is purified of material contamination. There are no material reactions resulting from the activities of a Krishna conscious person. Therefore, purified activities, which are generally called sadachara, can be easily performed by acting in Krishna consciousness. Sri Rupa Goswami, in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, describes this as follows. इहा ईहायस्य हरेर्दास्ये कर्मणा मनसा गिरा निखिलास्वपि अवस्थासु जीवन्मुक्त स उच्यते. A person acting in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, in the service of Krishna, with his body, mind, intelligence, and words, is a liberated person even within the material world, although he may be engaged in many so called material activities. He has no false ego, nor does he believe that he is this material body, nor that he possesses the body. He knows that he is not this body and that this body does not belong to him. He himself belongs to Krishna, and the body too belongs to Krishna. When he applies everything produced of the body, mind, intelligence, words, life, wealth, etc., whatever he may have within his possession, to Krishna's service, he is at once dovetailed with Krishna. He is one with Krishna, and is devoid of the false ego that leads one to believe that he is the body, etc. This is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. Text 12. युक्तकर्मफलं त्यक्त्वा शान्तिमाप्नोति नैष्ठिकीम् अयुक्तकामकारेण फले सक्तो निबध्यते. Synonyms. Yuktaha, one who is engaged in devotional service. Karma phalam, the fruits of all activities, the results of all activities. Tyaktva, giving up. Shantim, perfect peace. Apnoti, achieves. Naishtikim, unflinching. Ayuktaha, one who is not in Krishna consciousness. Kamakarena, for enjoying the result of work. Phale, in the result. Saktaha, attached. Nibadhyate, becomes entangled. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Purport. The difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. The person who is attached to Krishna and works for him only is certainly a liberated person, and he is not anxious for fruitive rewards. In the Bhagavatam, the cause of anxiety over the result of an activity is explained as being due to one's functioning in the conception of duality, that is, without knowledge of the absolute truth. Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. In Krishna consciousness, there is no duality. All that exists is a product of Krishna's energy, and Krishna is all good. Therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are on the absolute plane. They are transcendental and have no material effect. One is, therefore, filled with peace in Krishna consciousness. One who is, however, entangled in profit calculation for sense gratification cannot have that peace. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness. Realization that there is no existence besides Krishna is the platform of peace and fearlessness. Text 13. Sarvakarmani manasa sanyasyaste sukham vashi navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvanna karayan. Synonyms. Sarva, all. Karmani, activities. Manasa, by the mind. Sanyasya, giving up. Aste, remains. Sukham, in happiness. Vashi, one who is controlled. Navadvare, in the place, in the palace where there are 9 gates. Pure, in the city. Dehi, the embodied soul. Na, never. Eva, certainly. Kurvan, doing anything. Na, not. Karayan, causing to be done. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides within, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. Purport. The embodied soul lives in the city of 9 gates. The activities of the body, or the figurative city of body, are conducted automatically by the particular modes of nature. The soul, although subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, can be beyond those conditions, if he so desires. Owing only to forgetfulness of his superior nature, he identifies with the material body and therefore suffers. By Krishna consciousness, he can revive his real position and thus come out of his embodiment. Therefore, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, one at once becomes completely aloof from bodily activities. In such a controlled life, in which his deliberations are changed, he lives happily within the city of nine gates. The nine gates are described as follows: नवद्वारे पुरे देहि हंसो लेलायते बहिः वशी सर्वस्य लोकस्य स्थावरस्य चरस्य च. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within the body of a living entity, is the controller of all living entities all over the universe. The body consists of nine gates: two eyes, two nostrils, two ears, one mouth, the anus, and the genital. The living entity in his conditioned stage identifies himself with the body, but when he identifies himself with the Lord within himself, he becomes just as free as the Lord, even while in the body. Shvetashvatara Upanishad, chapter 3, verse 18. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is free from both the outer and inner activities of the material body. Text 14. न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते. Synonyms: na, never; kartrutvam, proprietorship; na, nor; karmani, activities; lokasya, of the people; srujati, creates; prabhuhu, the master of the city of the body; na, nor; karma phala, results of activities; samyogam, connection; swabhavaha, modes of material nature; tu, but; pravartate, acts. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: the embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Purport: the living entity, as will be explained in the seventh chapter, is one in nature with the Supreme Lord, distinguished from matter, which is another nature called inferior of the Lord. Somehow, the superior nature, the living entity, has been in contact with material nature since time immemorial. The temporary body or material dwelling place which he obtains is the cause of varieties of activities and their resultant reactions. Living in such a conditional atmosphere, one suffers the results of the activities of the body by identifying himself in ignorance with the body. It is ignorance acquired from time immemorial that is the cause of bodily suffering and distress. As soon as the living entity becomes aloof from the activities of the body, he becomes free from the reactions as well. As long as he is in the city of body, he appears to be the master of it, but actually he is neither its proprietor nor controller of its actions and reactions. He is simply in the midst of the material ocean, struggling for existence. The waves of the ocean are tossing him, and he has no control over them. His best solution is to get out of the water by transcendental Krishna consciousness. That alone will save him from all turmoil. Text 15. नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैव सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः. Synonyms: na, never; adatte, accepts; kasyachit, anyone's; papam, sin; na, nor; cha, also; eva, certainly; sukritam, pious activities; vibhuhu, the Supreme Lord; ajnanena, by ignorance; avritam, covered; jnanam, knowledge; tena, by that; muhyanti, bewildered; jantavaha, the living entities. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: Nor does the Supreme Spirit assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Purport: The Sanskrit word Vibhuhu means the Supreme Lord who is full of unlimited knowledge, riches, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation. He is always satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, but the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life, and thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. A living entity is, by superior nature, full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is Vibhu or omniscient, but the living entity is Anu or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. And so, when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires. But the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation which may be desired. Being in a bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies himself with the circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. The Lord is the constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma or the Supersoul, and therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul as one can smell the flavor of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning of the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desire as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not, therefore, omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of the minute, independent living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. The Vedic hymn therefore declares, Yesha u hyeva sadhu karma karayati tamyamebhyo lokebhya unninishyate. Yesha u agnyo jantuho अनीशोऽयम् आत्मनः सुखदुःखयोः ईश्वरः प्रेरितो गच्छेत् स्वर्गं वाश्वभ्रम् एव च. The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so he may go to hell. The living entity is completely dependent in his distress and happiness. By the will of the Supreme, he can go to heaven or hell as a cloud is driven by the air. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, and cognizant, due to the littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position of the service to the Lord and is thus entrapped by nescience. And, under the spell of ignorance, the living entity claims that the Lord is responsible for his conditional existence. The Vedanta Sutras also confirm this. Vishamya nairgrihne na sapekshavatvat tatha hi darshayati. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, though he appears to. Let's continue to read in the next session. Thank you for joining. Granthara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome all of you for today's Bhagavad Gita reading session. Let us begin with prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 5 entitled Karma Yoga Action in Krishna Consciousness. Text 16. ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानं येषां नाशितमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवत् ज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परम्. Synonyms: Jnanena, by knowledge, tu, but, tat, that, ajnanam, nescience, yesham, of those, nashitam, is destroyed, atmanaha, of the living entity, tesham, of their, adityavat, like the rising sun, jnanam, knowledge, prakashayati, discloses, tatparam, in Krishna consciousness. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, when, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Purport: Those who have forgotten Krishna must certainly be bewildered, but those who are in Krishna consciousness are not bewildered at all. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvam Jnana Plavena, Jnanagni Sarva Karmani, and Nahi Jnanena Sadrusham. Knowledge is always highly esteemed. And what is that knowledge? Perfect knowledge is achieved when one surrenders unto Krishna, as is stated in the 7th chapter 19th verse. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate. After passing through many, many births, when one perfect in knowledge surrenders unto Krishna, or when one attains Krishna consciousness, then everything is revealed to him, as the sun reveals everything in the daytime. The living entity is bewildered in so many ways. For instance, when he thinks himself God unceremoniously, he actually falls into the last snare of nescience. If a living entity is God, then how can he become bewildered by nescience? Does God become bewildered by nescience? If so, then nescience or Satan is greater than God. Real knowledge can be obtained from a person who is in perfect Krishna consciousness. Therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master and under him learn what Krishna consciousness is. The spiritual master can drive away all nescience as the sun drives away darkness. Even though a person may be in full knowledge that he is not this body but is transcendental to the body, he still may not be able to discriminate between the soul and the supersoul. However, he can know everything well if he cares to take shelter of the perfect, bona fide, Krishna conscious spiritual master. One can know God and one's relationship with God only when one actually meets a representative of God. A representative of God never claims that he is God, although he is paid all the respect ordinarily paid to God because he has knowledge of God. One has to learn the distinction between God and the living entity. Lord Sri Krishna therefore stated in the second chapter, chapter 2, verse 12, that every living being is individual and that the Lord also is individual. They were all individuals in the past, they are individuals at present, and they will continue to be individuals in the future, even after liberation. At night, we see everything as one in the darkness, but in day, when the sun is up, we see everything in its real identity. Identity with individuality in spiritual life is real knowledge. Text 17. तद्बुद्धयस्तदात्मानस्तन्निष्ठास्तत्परायणाः गच्छन्त्य पुनरावृत्तिं ज्ञाननिर्धूतकल्मषाः. Synonyms: Tadbuddhayaha, one whose intelligence is always in the Supreme. Tadatmanaha, one whose mind is always in the Supreme. Tatnishtaha, whose mind is only meant for the Supreme. Tatparayanaha, who has completely taken shelter of Him. Gacchanti, goes. Apunaha, avrittim, liberation. Jnana, knowledge. Nirdhuta, cleanses. Kalmashaha, misgivings. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: when one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. Purport: the supreme transcendental truth is Lord Krishna. The whole Bhagavad Gita centers around the declaration of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the version of all Vedic literature. Paratattva means the supreme reality, who is understood by the knowers of the Supreme as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the last word in the Absolute. There is nothing more than that. The Lord says, Mattaha parataram na anyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. Impersonal Brahman is also supported by Krishna. Brahmano hi pratisthaham. Therefore, in all ways, Krishna is the supreme reality, one whose mind, intelligence, faith, and refuge are always in Krishna, or, in other words, one who is fully in Krishna consciousness is undoubtedly washed clean of all misgivings and is in perfect knowledge in everything concerning transcendence. A Krishna conscious person can thoroughly understand that there is duality or simultaneous identity and individuality in Krishna, and equipped with such transcendental knowledge, one can make steady progress on the path of liberation. Text 18. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni chaiva shvapake cha pandita samadarshinaha. Synonyms: Vidya, education; Vinaya, gentleness; Sampanne, fully equipped; Brahmane, in the Brahmana; Gavi, in the cow; Hastini, in the elephant; Shuni, in the dog; Cha, and; Eva, certainly; Shvapake, in the dog-eater or the outcast; Cha, respectively; Panditaha, those who are so wise; Samadarshinaha, do see with equal vision. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater outcast. Purport: A Krishna-conscious person does not make any distinction between species or castes. The Brahmana and the outcast may be different from the social point of view, or a dog, a cow, or an elephant may be different from the point of view of species, but these differences of body are meaningless from the viewpoint of a learned transcendentalist. This is due to their relationship to the Supreme. For the Supreme Lord, by his plenary portion as Paramatma, is present in everyone's heart. Such an understanding of the Supreme is real knowledge. As far as the bodies are concerned, in different castes or different species of life, the Lord is equally kind to everyone because he treats every living being as a friend, yet maintains himself as Paramatma regardless of the circumstances of the living entities. The Lord as Paramatma is present both in the outcast and in the Brahmana, although the body of a Brahmana and that of an outcast are not the same. The bodies are material productions of different modes of material nature, but the soul and the supersoul within the body are of the same spiritual quality. The similarity in the quality of the soul and the supersoul, however, does not make them equal in quantity, for the individual soul is present only in that particular body, whereas the Paramatma is present in each and every body. A Krishna conscious person has full knowledge of this, and therefore he is truly learned and has equal vision. The similar characteristics of the soul and the supersoul are that they are both conscious, eternal, and blissful. But the difference is that the individual soul is conscious within the limited jurisdiction of the body, whereas the supersoul is conscious of all bodies. The supersoul is present in all bodies without distinction. Text 19. For those who have joined us later, we are reading from the fifth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Now we are reading the 19th shloka. इहैव तैर्जितः सर्गो येषां साम्ये स्थितं मनः निर्दोषं हि समं ब्रह्म तस्मात् ब्रह्मणि ते स्थिताः. Synonyms. Iha, in this life. Eva, certainly. Taihi, by them. Jitaha, conquered. Sargaha, birth and death. Yesham, of those. Samye, in equanimity. Sthitam, so situated. Manaha, mind. Nirdosham, flawless. He, certainly. Samam, in equanimity. Brahma, the supreme. Tasmat, therefore. Brahmani, in the supreme. Te, they. Sthitaha, are situated. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman. Purport. Equanimity of mind, as mentioned above, is the sign of self realization. Those who have actually attained to such a stage should be considered to have conquered material conditions, specifically birth and death. As long as one identifies with this body, he is considered a conditioned soul, but as soon as he is elevated to the stage of equanimity through realization of self, he is liberated from conditional life. In other words, he is no longer subject to take birth in the material world, but can enter into the spiritual sky after his death. The Lord is flawless because he is without attraction or hatred. Similarly, when a living entity is without attraction or hatred, he also becomes flawless and eligible to enter into the spiritual sky. Such persons are to be considered already liberated, and their symptoms are described below. Text 20. न प्रहृष्ये प्रियं प्राप्य नोद्विजेत् प्राप्य चाप्रियम् स्थिरबुद्धिरसम्मूढो ब्रह्मविद् ब्रह्मणि स्थितः. Synonyms. Na, never. Prahrishyet, rejoice. Priyam, pleasant. Prapya, achieving. Na, does not. Udvijet, agitated. Prapya, obtaining. Cha, also. Apriyam, unpleasant. Sthira buddhihi, self-intelligent. Asammudhaha, unbewildered. Brahmavit, one who knows the Supreme perfectly. Brahmani, in the transcendence. Sthitaha, situated. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments when obtaining something unpleasant, who is self intelligent, unbewildered, and who knows the signs of God, is to be understood as already situated in transcendence. Purport. The symptoms of the self realized person are given herein. The first symptom is that he is not illusioned by the false identification of the body with his true self. He knows perfectly well that he is not this body, but is the fragmental portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is therefore not joyful in achieving something, nor does he lament in losing anything which is related to his body. This steadiness of mind is called sthira buddhi or self-intelligence. He is therefore never bewildered by mistaking the gross body for the soul, nor does he accept the body as permanent and disregard the existence of the soul. This knowledge elevates him to the station of knowing the complete science of the Absolute Truth, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. He thus knows his constitutional position perfectly well without falsely trying to become one with the Supreme in all respects. This is called Brahman realization or self realization. Such steady consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. Text 21. Bahya sparsheshvasaktatma vindatyatmani yat sukham sabrahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayamashnute. Synonyms. Bahya sparsheshu, in external sense pleasure. Asakta atma, one who is not so attached. Vindati, enjoys. Atmani, in the self. Yat, that which. Sukham, happiness. Saha, that. Brahma Yoga, concentrated in Brahman. Yukta Atma, self connected. Sukham, happiness. Akshayam, unlimited. Ashnute, enjoys. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Such a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure or external objects, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self realized person enjoys unlimited pleasure, unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. Purport. Sri Yamunacharya, a great devotee in Krishna consciousness, said, Yadavadhi mama cheta Krishna padara vinde nava nava rasa dhamanudhyata rantumasit tadavadhi bata nari sangame smaryamane bhavati mukha vikara shushtu nishtivanam cha. Since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought, and my lips curl with distaste. A person in Brahma Yoga or Krishna consciousness is so absorbed in the loving service of the Lord that he loses his taste for material sense pleasure altogether. The highest pleasure in terms of matter is sex pleasure. The whole world is moving under its spell, and a materialist cannot work at all without this motivation. But a person engaged in Krishna consciousness can work with greater vigor without sex pleasure, which he avoids. That is the test in spiritual realization. Spiritual realization and sex pleasure go ill together. A Krishna conscious person is not attracted to any kind of sense pleasure, due to his being a liberated soul. Text 22. ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्त कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः. Synonyms: Ye, those; he, certainly; samsparshajaha, by contact with the material senses; bhogaha, enjoyment; dukkha, distress; yonayaha, sources of; eva, certainly; te, they are; adi, in the beginning; antavantaha, subject to; Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, na, never; teshu, in those; ramate, take delight; buddhaha, the intelligent. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. Purport: Material sense pleasures are due to the contact of the material senses, which are all temporary because the body itself is temporary. A liberated soul is not interested in anything which is temporary. Knowing well the joys of transcendental pleasures, how can a liberated soul agree to enjoy false pleasure? In the Padma Purana, it is said, Ramante yogino nante satyananda chidatmani iti ramapadena sau param brahma bhidhiyate. The mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasure from the Absolute Truth, and therefore the Supreme Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, is also known as Rama. In the Srimad Bhagavatam also it is said, Nayam deho deha bhajam nruloke kashtan kaman harhate vidbhujaye tapo divyam putrakayena sattvam shuddhyed brahma saukyam tvanantam. My dear sons, there is no reason to labor very hard for sense pleasure while in this human form of life. Such pleasures are available to the stool eaters, hogs. Rather, you should undergo penances in this life by which your existence will be purified, and as a result, you will be able to enjoy unlimited transcendental bliss. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Verse 1. Therefore, those who are true yogis or learned transcendentalists are not attracted by sense pleasures, which are the causes of continuous material existence. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. Text 23. शक्नोति हैव यः सोढुं प्राक्शरीरविमोक्षणात् कामक्रोधोद्भवं वेगं स युक्तः स सुखी नरः. Synonyms: Shaknoti, able to do; Iha eva, in the present body; Yaha, one who; Shodhum, to tolerate; Prak, before; Sharira, body; Vimokshanat, giving up; Kama, desire; Krodha, anger; Udbhavam, generated from; Vegam, urge; Saha, he; Yuktaha, in trance; Saha, he; Sukhi, happy; Naraha, human being. Translation and purport by Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada. Translation: Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses, and check the force of desire and anger. He is a yogi and is happy in this world. Purport. If one wants to make steady progress on the path of self realization, he must try to control the forces of the material senses. There are the forces of talk, forces of anger, forces of mind, forces of the stomach, forces of the genitals, and forces of the tongue. One who is able to control the forces of all these different senses and the mind is called a Goswami or Swami. Such Goswamis live strictly controlled lives and forego altogether the forces of the senses. Material desires, when unsatiated, generate anger, and thus the mind, eyes, and chest become agitated. Therefore, one must practice to control them before one gives up this material body. One who can do this is understood to be self realized and is thus happy in the state of self realization. It is the duty of the transcendentalist to try strenuously to control desire and anger. We shall continue to read in the next session, that is tomorrow. Please do join us at 1:30 p.m. Thank you for your valuable time. ग्रंथरा श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की जय.
Jai.
विश्व गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय.
Okay, Jai.
हरे कृष्णा.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Take care.
Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.